Thank Hashem that we're able to learn. It's chus of our learning. It's a Migdash, should be a panacea. Okay, we're going to start a new Mishnah on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. It says, that's 33b. Shnayim shekitshu shtei nashim. So far, very normal. Two people. Each one marries one woman. Everything's fine. Yeah. It doesn't tell us even that they're related. We don't know anything yet. It's just two people got married. However, there was an unfortunate occurrence. B'shas knisasan l'chuppah echlifu es shalzel lezeh v'shalzel lezeh. Yeah, the way it's written, it sounds more than it was just unfortunate. It sounds like it was on purpose. That's what it sounds like. They exchanged wives when it came time to consummate the marriage. So the kedushin, the betrothal was, I don't know, Reuven marries, what are we saying? We were usually saying Leah. Rashi switches it. Reuven marries Rachel, Shimon marries Leah. But when it came to the marriage, to the actual marriage that night, they ended up with the wrong wife in the room. So this is a big problem. So first of all, each of them had relations with a woman that was married to someone else. Oh. Now, because the betrothal is considered a full marriage, regarding the prohibition of a married woman. Okay, now let's complicate the case. Reuven and Shimon were actually brothers. So I don't know why they would get married on the same night. Yeah, that makes it complicated on the guests, which wedding they're going to go to, unless they did it in the same hall. Okay. Same caterer, right. They saved money on that. Yeah, that would be the normal case. They got it was a Friday night, you know how they used to do it in Europe. It was a Friday night meal. Oh. That way they didn't have to spend extra money on a weekday meal. They were a Shabbos meal anyway. So Vimayachin and Mishameshesach. There's another prohibition here. Each one had relations with his brother's wife. Besides a married woman, it's his brother's wife. Vimayachayas. Okay, let's complicate it even more. Let's say Rachel and Leah were sisters. Then we have another problem. Third prohibition. Each one married had relations with his wife's sister. Third problem. This is just for kicks. They throw in one more prohibition. If, let's say, they were a nida, mishum nida. It doesn't have to do with relatives. It's showing you that it could get worse. There's also the fourth prohibition of that the woman could have been a nida. Okay. Afterwards, the Gemara is going to need to discuss how this took place, because if it wasn't on purpose, so then they would be forbidden to their husbands. This couldn't have been on purpose. But whatever the case is, even if it's not on purpose, they have to be separated from their husbands for 3 months. Why? You want to be able to tell who the father is. They didn't have pregnancy tests. They would they would actually wait it out for 3 months to see if it's clear, if you could tell that she's pregnant. If they were children, anyways, they don't get pregnant. The wives were very young. So then they can return to their husbands right away. If they're kaihenes, we're going to see soon what that's referring to. They can't eat truma. We'll see. No, at all. From then on. Okay, we'll see at the end of the Gemara. Yechlifu, the Gemara says Yechlifu. They exchanged wives. Midi b'rishei askinan. Are we dealing with wicked people? Is that what the Mishnah is coming to tell me about? These wicked people have to bring a karban chatas, or not a karban chatas. It's not even telling me anything, because it's bemezid. It would just be karis. And if there's no witnesses. So what are you telling me, that there's 4 karises? So Vesu Hadatani Rabchia Harikan Sheshesrei Chatois. And Reb Chia has a brisa on this Mishnah. Reb Chia had another version of teachings that went alongside the Mishnayos. And in his version, in his teaching that went alongside this Mishnah, it says that this would be 16 animal sacrifices. Why 16? Well, each one of these individuals has to bring 4. So it's 4 times 4. So it's 16. The women also have to bring. So now, Iba Mazid, if it's the way that you put it, they exchanged wives on purpose, that's a miyaka carbon. You don't bring an animal sacrifice for a Mazid. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, this is the Rabbi Yehuda, that's the student of Rav and Shmuel, second generation of Meira. He says, Tani huchlafu. You have to amend the Mishnah. Amend the Mishnah, not to say hechlifu, but huchlafu. Huchlafu means that it happened to get exchanged. It was switched. Not that they switched it, but it was switched. Okay. You have to say this anyway. The Ktani Seifa, because if you read further in the Mishnah, it says, it says that if there were young girls that are not able to get pregnant, so then they're allowed to return to their husbands immediately. Well, 1 second. If they would have committed adultery on purpose, would they be allowed to go back to their husbands? They would be forbidden to their husbands. It says, that's not a question. You told me that the little girls, they were seduced. And a little girl that's seduced is considered like rape, a minor. Yeah. That's consistent with what we think also, that it's always considered rape for a minor. So, they consent. They had consent. We don't consider that consent. So if that's the case, then they would be permissible back to their husbands. So it's not a problem to tell me. How are you telling me that they're permissible to their husbands if it was on purpose? What do you mean on purpose? It's considered rape. It's not on purpose. So yeah, but they consented. It's not considered consent. So the age, we have different. The age is 12. Our age is 18. The age is a few years off, 6 years off. Okay. So Ella diktani, but this that it taught in the Mishnah, Mafrishinais and Shleisha Chadashim Shemu Barasin, anyways have a problem. You know what the problem is? That it says that if we separate them for 3 months, what does that mean? After 3 months, they go back to the husband. How are they allowed to go back to the husband? They committed adultery. They're forbidden to their husband. It says, halav mubar sharian. But if they're not pregnant, then if after 3 months they're not pregnant, they're allowed to go back. If it was on purpose, adultery, they're not permissible. We see that Rabbi Yehuda is correct, that you have to amend that one word of the Mishnah that says that they were exchanged. It's not really exchanged. It means that they were exchanged. That they exchanged them on purpose, that they happened to have been, that it was a mistake. Okay. That was easy. No, that doesn't work. No. Yeah. David's asking a logical question that maybe they both, because the husband and wife both committed adultery, then that should cancel each other out and they should be allowed. But in Torah law, it doesn't go like that. And I can imagine something like that in secular circles. They're saying, well, we'll forgive each other, Yeah. But that doesn't fit with it's not consistent with the Torah.
It's called open marriage.
Right? I had that in contracts. I got in trouble for that. The teacher was saying, oh, this side did something wrong, this side did something wrong. Then I said, oh, do 2 wrongs make a right? And the law professor was very mad at me. Interrupting his class.
2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah. When I was younger, they would tell me, but 2 rights made an airplane.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a kid thing, I would say. Okay. Uman haitana de islay iser kailel v'isser moisef iser basachas. Okay. You weren't expecting a Gemara Yevamos to be so easy. So I had to really throw in some factors here that are going to make it a little complicated. Who is the one that holds? You see, we just said that there's 4 prohibitions. We had a problem, because we have a problem with this because we've learned before that once something is prohibited, it doesn't become prohibited again. It's not like we call it stackable. You don't have like another prohibition on top of another prohibition on top of another. It was already forbidden the first time. But apparently, according to this, and especially according to Reb Chia, there's 16 sacrifices. So each one clearly is bringing 4 sacrifices if this was a mistake. So, but I thought there's only one prohibition, and you can't add prohibitions onto prohibitions. So there are exceptions to that we've been learning before. One was called the Isser Moisef. If the second prohibition is a little bit larger than the first one. The other one was called Isser Kailal, which is another type of, it's a little larger than the first one. And then there's Basachas, if they came simultaneous. So who's the author that holds that we accept all 3? Isser Moisef, Isser Kailal, and Isser Basachas. So Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, it's Rav Yehuda again. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, in the name of his teacher Rav Meir. It's Reb Meir. Let me just explain the case. Rashi explains the case very clearly. Ruvain, he says, marries Rachel. Usually we were saying Ruvain marries Leah. Here, Ruvain marries Rachel. Guess the 2 R's for the first initial. Okay. Rachel is forbidden to Shimon because it's for 2 reasons. First of all, she's a married woman. So that's the obvious. Second of all, it's her brother's wife. It's his sister-in-law. It's his brother's wife. So it's his sister-in-law. So that's 2 prohibitions right there. Let's call that basachas, simultaneous. When she became married to his brother, she became a married woman, and she also became his brother's wife. So it's a basachas. So both of those are going to count. Then Shimon goes and marries Leah. Now we have a new prohibition that not only is Leah a married woman, not only is Rachel the married woman, and not only is Rachel his brother's wife, but Rachel is also his wife's sister. So that's a 3rd prohibition. That prohibition would be considered an Isser Kailal. Why? Because when Shimon marries Leah, he becomes prohibited to Rachel, which he was already, but he also becomes prohibited to Bilhah and Zilpah. There's more women there that just became, because the prohibition now applies to Bilhah and Zilpah, which was never before. So it's like under this umbrella that's necessary, because Bilhah and Zilpah are now becoming forbidden. More sisters, Rachel and Leah. So that would extend over also to Rachel, who had a previous prohibition. So now she has a 3rd prohibition. What's the 4th one? Is then Rachel becomes a Nida. Well, yeah, so what's the big deal? The big deal is that she used to be permitted to her husband. Now she becomes prohibited to her husband. So the fact that she becomes prohibited to her husband is an increase of men that are now prohibited to her. That's called the Isser Moisef. So the fact that it applies to her husband means that it also applies to, it can extend also to Shimon. And that's an Isser Moisef. So here we have a Basachas, we have a Isser Kailal, and we have a Isser Moisef. So who's the one that holds of all these? So we go to Rabbi Yehuda Marav, says it's Reb Meir. The Tanya was started in a brisa. Yesh oichel achila achas v'chayev le'arba chatoyis b'ashem echad. Someone takes 1 bite, and he's chayev 4 sin offerings and 1 guilt offering. Yeah, pretty crazy. So what did he do? We say he's a Tami Shachal Chelav Unaiser min Makdashim B'Yom Kippurim. Reb Meir Omer Meiser Shabbos V'Tzia B'Piv Chayev. Okay. Amalei Enim Min Hashem. Let's. I'm on 34A. Yeah, 2 lines from the top. We say it's Reb Meir. What happened over here? Well, when the animal was born, there's a prohibition on the fats that are in the animal. That prohibition is chelav. Those fats are forbidden. So that prohibition takes effect at the birth of the animal. Then the animal became consecrated. He said, this animal will be a sacrifice. So not only is he not allowed to eat the forbidden fats, he's not allowed to eat the rest of the animal. And he's not allowed to benefit from the rest of the animal. So the animal itself becomes more prohibited. That's called the Isser Meisef. Then when it's brought on the altar, it was left for too long. When it was sacrificed, it was left for too long. So it becomes nicer. Nicer is the leftover meat, right? It was left over. So that's another prohibition. How does that prohibition? Yeah, everything's wrong. How does that prohibition increase? The answer is because it used to be permitted to the altar.
It can't get any worse.
And then it becomes prohibited to the altar. Not overcooked, left for too long, over the time limit. So the fact that it becomes more prohibited, there's someone else that's prohibited to this. Who's that someone? The altar is now prohibited to this. So that's an Isser Meisef as well. So we have 2 Isser Meisefs here. Okay, then he becomes Tamei. The fellow becomes Tamei. Well, since he's not only prohibited to this piece of meat that went on the altar, that was supposed to go on the altar, that was forbidden fat. He's also prohibited to any other sacrificial meat. So that's called the Isser Kailal. There's more that would be comparable to the more women that he's prohibited to, like the more sisters. That's Isser Kailal. It's not more people prohibited to this, more things prohibited to him. That's the Isser Kailal. Okay, and then it's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, he's not only not allowed to eat this piece of meat, but he's also not allowed to eat any piece of meat. So that's also an Isser Kailal. The problem is that it's also Shabbos. Now, there's a question if you're allowed to carry on Yom Kippur. There's a discussion. We all know that you're not allowed to carry, but in this opinion, they held that you are allowed to carry on Yom Kippur, but because it's Shabbos, if he carries this piece of meat, that would be another prohibition. But when does the prohibition take effect? When Shabbos comes in. So Shabbos and Yom Kippur come at the same time. So it's prohibited to eat, it's prohibited to carry. That's the Isser Basachas. Those take effect at the same time. Okay, so we know that Reb Meir holds of Kailal and Meisef and Basachas, that they're stackable prohibitions. So it would be the opinion of Reb Meir. That would be the author of our Mishnah. The Gemara now says, the sages tell him, Amrullah Yenim and Hashem. It's not correct what you're saying about Shabbos. I think that's what it's referring to. I don't have any Rashi on that. Okay. The Gemara now asks, for Reb Meir Ali B'Daman, which opinion is Reb Meir following? I Ali B'Rab Yeshua. There's a sugya that's only in several places in Shas. Yeah, I think this is it's really a where do we have it in not in Pesachim? We had it in Shabbos. It goes like this: There's a concept that if someone was attempting to do something right and they end up doing something wrong, so they get exempt from a sacrifice. It's like a Good Samaritan law. You were trying your best, so you can't get sued. So
that's not including like something that was inadvertent that he did by mistake. It has to be an act of goodwill.
It was an act of goodwill, and then he ends up. So this is Rabbi Yeshua's view that if someone was trying to do a mitzvah, like for example, there were two babies that were born. One was born before Shabbos, one was born already on Shabbos.
So how do you back that up?
Yeah, so it goes like this. So the bris is for one of them was supposed to be on Shabbos. For one of them was not supposed to be on Shabbos. And he does the wrong baby, confused. He did the bris on the wrong one. So he violated Shabbos. That's the problem. But because he was trying to do a mitzvah, Rabbi Yeshua says he's exempt from a sacrifice. Yeah, it's ta'a bidvar mitzvah. It's a special halacha that Rabbi Yeshua holds up. Now, so what was happening over here? We have this fellow that was trying to get married. And we explained the case before that it was a mistake that the wives got mixed up. It was not done on purpose. So really, he's ta'a bidvar mitzvah. So he shouldn't be chayav anyway, right? According to Rabbi Yeshua, ta'a bidvar mitzvah. He was trying they got confused, right? Like by Yaakov, right? Right? That's the case. It's ta'a bidvar mitzvah. Over there, he wasn't really married to Rachel, right? By Yaakov in the original Bible story. So the Gemara says, so it must be according to Rabbi Eliezer that holds that ta'a bidvar mitzvah is still chayiv, and that way our Mishnah will fit. Okay. Iba Yisema, if you want, you could say Laila Maliba de Rabbi Yeshua. It could really follow Rabbi Yeshua as well. But Kikam Rabbi Yeshua ta'a bidvar mitzvah pata. When does Rabbi Yeshua say there's an exemption over here by ta'a bidvar mitzvah if it was an act of goodwill and there was a mistake that he's exempt from a sacrifice? Hani milagabi tinaikus dizmanei bal. That's because he had to do the circumcision today. And if the day passes, then he neglected to do it in its correct time. So because of that stress, we exempt him. But over here, but over here, by the marriage, he doesn't have to get married tonight. He should have verified what's going on. There's no stress of time. So why do you say that he's exempt? He should find out what's the, what's your passport number, identification number before, right? It could be the wrong person. He has time to find that out. The Gemara says, what are you telling me? He's exempt by Truma. What was the case? The Tanan, we have a Mishnah like this. He's in the middle of eating Truma. He finds out, he's not allowed to be eating Truma. He's not really a Kayan. He's a Ben Grusha. His mother, he finds out something about his mother. His mother was really divorced. His mother was a Chalutza. He finds out that information. No, while he's eating.
Oh, wow.
So, Rabbi Elazar Mechayev Karen V'Chaimish Rabbi Shua Paiter. Now, he didn't have to finish eating. He could have verified. He could have stopped or something, but because he was in middle. What are you saying? He found out after he ate? Is that what the commentary says? He found out after he ate?
If the priest was partaking Truma and it became known that he was the son of the divorced woman.
Did he stop at that moment or did he continue? I guess he swallowed the bite.
From eating Truma.
Yeah. So he didn't have to continue. But we said, if he would have continued, that would have been amazing. It must be that he stopped when he knew. It was before he knew.
Yeah.
And we're saying that it was a mistake. We're saying that maybe he should have found out. He should have verified before he ate. Why did he rush to eat without verifying his status? So we say, you see, even though he had more time to eat, but nevertheless, because of his goodwill, he's still exempt. He was trying to do the mitzvah of eating truma. So it doesn't have to do with time. The Gemara says, no, that's a mistake. It does have to do with time because Itmar Allah was taught on this. Amar of Bibi Barabaya. Bibi Barabaya, this is Abaya's son. He says, no, this was a real rush. He was pressured for time. If this is grain, it's Erev Pesach. he has to finish eating it before the time comes where it has to be burnt. You don't want truma to be burnt. So he wants to eat it right away. So he doesn't have time to go start verifying his status. So that's why he was rushed. So the fact that you're telling me that when it comes to goodwill, you're exempt and it doesn't matter on the time, that's not true. It is dependent on the time. And here we're talking about it was Erev Pesach. Back to our original question. Why are you telling me that this fellow that was getting married would be exempt according to Rabbi Yeshua? There's no pressure for time. You could first verify which wife this is, which woman this is. There's no pressure for time. V'bayisema, give another answer. And now we're going back and we're saying that we're not discussing over here the Isser Maisif and Isser Kailal. Really, all of the cases that we're discussing right now, where there's 4 prohibitions, this is really an Isser Basachas. It's all simultaneous. How is this going to be simultaneous? It goes like this. We explained this case yesterday. These 2 brothers, Reuven and Shimon, they wanted to marry Rachel and Leah. So they gave money to a messenger. Rachel and Leah wanted to marry Reuven and Shimon. So they sent a messenger to go get the money. That would be the Kedushin money, the marriage. So when does the prohibition all take effect? Exactly when the money was exchanged from one to another, all 4 prohibitions take effect. Yeah, I said that too fast. Because Nida has nothing to do with that. All 3 prohibitions. The Nida is the problematic one. Because money being exchanged from one messenger to another has nothing to do with her becoming a Nida.
Does Nida have anything to do with
marriage?
Truma?
No. Oh yes, it does. She's not letting Truma, but that's another case. Yeah, the rules of Nida apply even if she's not married. And that's the...
I mean, nowadays we just assume that if it's a unmarried woman, she's pretty much always...
Right. That's an assumption. Gemara says, how's it possible that the Nida was all simultaneous with the marriage? How does that work? The Gemara gives me an interesting answer. Amarav Amram Amarav b'shefas mitoich gimel lacher shleisha aser l'chiyuv v'yinu mitoich shnei maser lacher shnei maser l'chiyuv v'yinu, saying that her she started to bleed. Well, actually, the Rashi spells this out a little bit. That they were the Reuben and Shimon were born on Rosh Hashanah. Well, a year later, Rachel and Leah were born on Rosh Hashanah. So 13 years later, 12 years from the second one, Rachel and Leah are now of age, of maturity, and Reuben and Shimon are of age. What happened is Reuven and Shimon send money to marry Rachel and Leah, and the marriage should take effect on Rosh Hashanah. Now, at that time, the money was given before to take effect right after. At that time, Rachel and Leah began to get their periods, and they started to bleed, and they were tamei at the moment that they became of age. So the marriage and the nida was all simultaneous.
Yeah, right. That could still happen.
Yeah. Okay, we figured out a case. That's how the Gemara ends. Yeah. So this is another possibility where it's not really the opinion of Reb Meir that holds of Isser Maisif and Isser Kailal and Isser Basachas. It's really just the opinion of Reb Shimon that only holds of Isser Basachas, not Isser Kailal and Isser Maisif. We figured out a way that it could work. Okay, now it says Mafrishin Eisen, that these women have to be separated from their husbands for 3 months, because that was an old-fashioned pregnancy test to see if they became pregnant. And because we want to differentiate between if the child was born from the adulterous relationship or if it's from the husband. So we have to separate it. If the wives are switched or mixed. The Gemara says, 1 second. We have a rule. From the first relation, the woman doesn't become pregnant.
Oh, because she's.
No, not because of a nida. We just have a rule. We assume that she's a virgin. And from that first pregnancy, that when she becomes not a virgin, that first pregnancy would not make her, that first relation would not make her pregnant. That's what we're thinking. I think the logic has to do with that the blood from the basulim would cover up and not allow her to get pregnant. I think that would be the rationale.
Really?
It does happen, yeah. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, Shabala v'shanu. A simple teretz. He lived with her twice. And he still didn't know who it was. They had two relations that night. That's a problem. Rab Chia told me there's only 16 sacrifices according to your teretz, Rabba Vo. Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. It's Rav Nachman in the name of Rabba bar Avua, his father-in-law. He's according to this answer, there's 32 because each relation should incur another sacrifice. The Gemara says, "You think that's a problem? Let me make the problem even worse." But sometimes by making the problem worse, you can resolve it. So he says, Rabbi Lezer says that it's not the relations that creates that incurs the sacrifice. It's every strength that goes into that relation. Every time he would press on her. So that would be another sacrifice. So this could be not 32. I don't know how many. It could be many. So what are you telling me that it's only 16? According to Reb Chia, would be many. So we have to answer. According to Rabbi Lezer, we would have to say that Reb Chia is just counting the first strength. So even if we're not following Rabbi Lezer, we're just following how many punishments there would be, how many chatayos there would be for the first relations. Now, you want to talk about if she was going to become pregnant, that's from the second relations. But what our number that we were giving you was just for the first time. Amalei Rava or Rav Nachman. Rava asks Rav Nachman a question from the Torah. Rava says like this. Tamar Yabra. Tamar lived with Yehuda just once. Remember, Tamar was Yehuda's daughter-in-law, and she's on the side of the road. He didn't recognize her, and he has one relation with. She has one relation with him, and she becomes pregnant, twins.
But she wasn't a virgin.
Oh, so 1 second.
She had prior relations.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go through this carefully. What's going on over here? Amalei Tamar be'etzba macha says Tamar, although according to this, she didn't have any relations previously, but she took away her virginity with her finger. She pressed it out. She tore it out. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak kol mayaches shel beis Rebbe Tamar shman. Anyone, all of the girls, I'm not sure if it's this, all the girls of Beis Rebbe, anyone from the family of Rebbe that would remove their virginity, their names were Tamar. Tamar. Why are they called Tamar? Al Shem Tamar Shemacham Be'etzba. It's named after Tamar, that Tamar took out her virginity with her finger. Okay. The Gemara says the obvious question. 1 second, she was married before. Va'erva einan, but she was married twice. Yeah, that's the big question. She was married twice. The Gemara says erva einan shimshush like kedarkan. Erva einan did not live with her in a normal manner. Just she was still a virgin. They only lived with her in an abnormal manner. So it never affected her virginity. Is that good enough to consecrate the marriage? Yeah, it's definitely considered. If it would have been in a relationship, like adulterous relationship, it would definitely be considered adultery as well. Yeah. So, Meisveit, the Gemara has a question. If a woman is pregnant, if a woman has a baby, so now there's a problem. If she becomes pregnant again, it's going to affect the milk. She won't be able to nurse. The new pregnancy will affect the milk. So what should she do? What should the husband do? The husband should have relations with her, but when it comes when the semen is coming out, he should come outside her body and let it spill outside. The Gemara's expression: he should thresh inside and then winnow outside. That's the Gemara's terminology. Dash is one of the malachas on Shabbos. So permissible. So one second. This is Rebbe Lezer's view. The Gemara says, "Armalei halalu ein elamai k'maaseh erva einan." That's not allowed. That's what erva einan did. Okay, what's our question? You told me before that erva einan had an abnormal relation, and therefore Tama was still a virgin. Now you're telling me that the relation was normal. They just made sure that she didn't become pregnant. That's the question. The Gemara answers, "K'maaseh erva einan v'lei k'maaseh erva einan." It was similar to erva einan. Kim, I say, said like erva einan, but not exactly like erva einan.
Although she can't conceive anyway if she's pregnant, right? So.
Yeah, but they were concerned that she would conceive. No, but she's not pregnant.
Oh, okay.
She's nursing. If she would end up becoming pregnant, that would affect the milk. So, and we don't want that to affect the milk of the baby that's nursing. So we're trying to keep her from not to get pregnant. The Gemara says, "K'maaseh erva einan," it's similar to erva einan. There's a pasuk imba. Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, that's what my Gemara says. He came to his brother's wife and he destroyed the seed on the ground. That's what it says. However, but it's not similar to what Er did, because it's not similar to erva einan. Because over here, what we're suggesting, what Rabbi Eliezer was suggesting for this.
That was for Yibum.
Yeah, for the Yibum, for Einan should live with Tamar, which was Er's wife, that Er passed away. So over here, what was being suggested was that he should have relations with her, but then he should make sure she doesn't become pregnant by not finishing off inside. But by erva einan, it was actually an abnormal relation. Okay. Bishleima einan, we know what this is referring to by einan d'ksiv ba v'shiches arza. He destroyed the seed on the ground. Ela er minala, and how do you know that Er did the same thing? All of this was an assumption that Tamar was still a virgin, and that's why we had this question: that how does she become pregnant from the first time? We had the answer that she removed the virginity with her fingers. That he also died. When it says that Einan died, that's afhu ba'isim yisemes. He died for the same death. Bishleima Einan. I know why he did this. Mishum loy hazera, because the seed would not belong to him. The child would end up being his brother's, considered the brother's child. Ela Er my time of it hachi. Why was Er not making her pregnant? What was he concerned about? It would have been his child. It says Kadesh Sabra Biachish Yafya. He didn't want her to become not pretty. When she would be pregnant, she wouldn't be pretty. He wanted to keep her pretty.
That's not fitting very well, though. If they're doing atypical relationship, then what would be the point of winnowing outside? She wouldn't get pregnant anyway.
No. We tell the statement of Rabbi Eliezer to winnow outside was prohibited because that was like what erva einan did. Now, erva einan did not do that. Erva einan had an abnormal relationship. But it's like...
But it says in the pasuk, specifically, they went out outside.
Yeah, so we're saying that, according to this, we're saying that that's considered like outside.
Oh.
That's considered like wasting it. Because she can't become pregnant from an abnormal relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a very interesting taisvus over here. which discusses is an abnormal relationship permissible.
What is the abnormal relationship exactly?
It would be that he lived with her from no. Abnormal means that the relationship was not that they were together in the normal manner. That he had he had a relationship with her, but he went inside her body, not from the normal manner.
Oh,
yeah, that's the abnormal relationship. Yeah, I didn't spell it out. Okay, so but Taisus over here says it's mashma from what we're saying, because we're prohibiting. Rebbe Lezer is suggesting that they have an abnormal relationship when the woman's pregnant, when the woman is nursing, and the sages tell him that no, that's like erva einon. Sounds like that's prohibited. Taisus comes out actually at the end that it's not prohibited. It's a very interesting Taisus because Taisus is not explaining why it's not. He says it's erva einon that we're always planning on destroying the seed. But if a person has a desire, and it's just a temporary desire, wants to live with his wife in an abnormal manner, he's allowed to do whatever he wants with his wife. Yeah. And Taisus doesn't explain, like, what is it? What are you talking about? Is that, what do you mean by a cry? A cry means like...
I feel like I don't quite see
How did we get into this? Because we're talking about if the woman will become pregnant from the one relation, and that's why she now has to be separated from her husband for 3 months to wait to see if she became pregnant. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. It says that if a man has an emission of seed, so he becomes tummy. For 1 day, he goes to the mikveh, he's tired that evening. And also the woman that he lives with is also tummy. So every time after relations, he's tummy and the woman's tummy. Okay. It says, Isa, the pasuk says that a man, when he lays with the woman, so she has to wash in water. They wash in water. When it says her, Yishkav Yish Isa, Shechvazera, Prat Lakala. We say a kala does not need, a bride does not need to go to the mikveh. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Chacham say prat l'shlei kedarka. Chacham say no. It's actually not excluding a kala. It's excluding a man that lay with a woman in an abnormal manner. That because the pasuk says shichvas zera, that he gives her seed, it would only be seed that she could become pregnant from. But because this was an abnormal way, she would not become pregnant. So it's excluding such a relationship that she's not tummy. Amalei Hain Breder Rav Nachman Rav Nachman. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Hain, but that's Rav Nachman's son's name. So yeah, we get a new one every once in a while, a new Amira. So Hain asks Rav Nachman of Belema Kasav Rabbi Yehuda Terachas al Tachshit Tikala. Are you trying to say that because the kala has so much makeup, that the Torah doesn't want her to have to use the mikveh because that would ruin her makeup? He responded, says no. What the Torah is telling us is that because she can't become pregnant from the first time, and we said that when does she have to use the mikveh? That's only if it was a relationship that she could become pregnant from. Just like the sages told us that if an abnormal relationship, she doesn't need to use the mikveh. So the kala is the same thing. So then, b'maika miflagi. Then what is the argument? They're both saying the same thing. Rabbanan savi shechva zera prat lara. When the Rabbanan say that when the pasuk says shechva zera, a relationship that gives seed, that's referring to, that's excluding if the relationship was never completed. He just had a minimal relationship, and then he stopped in the middle, and that was it. It's the machlekes, how much har is, how much he went inside. Isa, but then when it says her, that's an exclusion. Prat l'shlei kedarka, that's excluding if it was in an abnormal manner. So both of those are exempt from using the mikveh. Rabbi Yehuda savar shlei kedarka v'ara mishich v'zera nafka. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Both of those come from the same pasuk. If it's just a Arab, which means the relationship wasn't completed, there was no seed. And also it was an abnormal relation. All of that comes from the word Shechva Zera. Isa. And when it says her, Pratlakala, that's coming to exclude also the bride. Okay. That's the machlekes. If it's including a bride, that is exempt. Kiyasa Ravin, Rabbi Yechanan, when Ravin came, he said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Ravin was a traveler and he came from Eretz Yisrael and he brought statements in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. One of them that he brought said like this: Kol sheshasa achar baila eseshana v'nisa shaveni yeledas. If a woman was married and her husband passed away, and she waits 10 years, and she gets remarried, she'll never have a child after that because she was waiting 10 years. It sounds like something closes up inside. It's finished. She's not going to have a child. That's what the statement was. Okay.
It's something that happens, but it's not permanent.
Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, this only applies if she didn't have intention to get married. No, so all those 10 years she said, I'm never getting married. Then she changed her mind after 10 years. But if she was intending to get married all of those times, she's been dating. So then Misaberes, then she'll still become pregnant. Amalei Rava Labas Rav Chizda. Rava tells to his wife, Rav Chizda's daughter, Kamarani Rabban Nabasrich. The rabbis are gossiping about you because her first husband passed away. It was only 10 years later that she marries Rava. And she's having a child. How does she have a child? It must have been that she had relations while she was in the middle. That doesn't look good. Amrale. So she says to him, Anadaiti ala chava, you know, I was thinking about you the whole time. Now we have the rest of the story. We know the story. This was when she was a child. She was sitting on her father's lap, Rav Chizda. And Rav Chizda said, which one of my students would you like to marry? Rami Bar Chama or Rava? And so she says, both of them. So Rava says, I'll go second. And what he meant was because Rami Bar Chama passed away, Rava didn't want to die. He doesn't want to go second. But Rava was married. So I think what happened was Rava's wife passed away and then he married Bas Rav Chizda. I don't know. I guess back then also we waited until, for whatever reason, he waited 10 years until he married. Okay. Hahi the Asya Lakamid Rav Yosef. There was this woman, she comes in front of Rav Yosef, Amra Lai, she says to Rav Yosef, Rabbi, I waited 10 years after my husband passed away, and I still became pregnant. I had a child. Says, my daughter, don't make the sages look bad. Don't make a false statement on the state. Amra Lai, so she admitted, she said, Lenachri Navalti. Yeah, I did have a relationship with a non-Jewish man. I don't know if Lenachri means a non-Jewish man or if it means someone that she wasn't married to. I don't know. What does the English say?
Gentile.
A Gentile, okay. And that's why it wasn't really 10 years. Okay. Amar Shmuel. I have a problem with starting this Gemara. This is a whole discussion, this new Gemara. Let's leave this Gemara here. Okay. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.